Hey everyone, Alex here. If you've ever had a woodworking project come out just a bit off, or, a lot off, chances are the mistake happened long before you made your first cut. In my shop, I see it time and time again. Folks get all excited, rush into the sawdust, and forget that precision starts at the drawing board with the most basic tool, how you measure. And let me tell you, even a single millimeter of error can throw the whole thing into chaos. That tiny little slip adds up, and suddenly your drawers don't fit, your miters don't meet, and your hard work feels wasted. Today we're breaking down the 7 most common measuring mistakes in woodworking, and I'll show you how the pros sidestep every one of them. Whether you're new to the craft or you've got sawdust in your veins, these are the habits that separate frustration from flawless builds. And trust me, mistake number 6? It's a silent killer. Probably ruin more projects than anything else in the shop. So, grab your tape, your pencil, and a fresh cup of coffee. Let's start with the first one. Let's kick things off with the tape measure, a tool we all reach for a dozen times a day. Now, the hook on the end isn't just a convenient way to grab the edge of your board, it's actually designed to move. That little bit of play, just a millimeter or so, is there to compensate for the thickness of the hook itself. But if your hook is bent, or it's gotten loose over time, your measurements will be all over the place. Pros never assume their tape is perfect. Here's a trick. Measure a known length, say, a piece of steel or a ruler, both by pushing against the tape and by hooking it. The numbers should match. If they don't, your tape is lying to you. Time for a replacement or some careful adjustment. I've thrown out more tapes than I care to admit, but it's better than ruining a whole project. Don't trust a tape until you know it's true. And remember, if you're using that tape for critical measurements, check it every few weeks. Once that hook starts to wobble, you're flirting with disaster. Always measure both ways, push, then pull, and see if you get the same result. If you don't, that's your warning sign. It's a simple habit, but one that saves a lot of grief. That's the pro mindset. Check your tools, not just your work. Get this step right, and you're already ahead of most mistakes. Next up, the humble pencil. It seems harmless, right? But a thick pencil line is the enemy of accuracy. Most builder-grade pencils leave a fat, fuzzy mark, and if you're not careful, you might cut on the wrong edge or lose a millimeter here and there. That's all it takes to throw off your joinery or make your panels not fit. The pros use marking knives or ultra-sharp pencils. A marking knife gives you a crisp, thin line. Think of it as a physical groove in the wood that your saw blade can reference. If a knife's not handy, I'll grab a mechanical pencil with a fine lead, always sharp, always consistent. It's about giving yourself a line you can trust, not a vague suggestion. When you're laying out a cut, decide, will you cut to the left of the line, right of the line, or split it? Consistency is everything. Make it a habit to mark your waist side too, so you don't get confused later. That visual cue saves a lot of head scratching. So, ditch the dull carpenter's pencil for layout work. Save it for rough marks and grab a marking knife or fine pencil when accuracy matters. Your future self will thank you. Now, this one's sneaky. Measuring every part separately. It sounds logical, but it's a recipe for what I call cumulative error. Let's say you're building a box. You measure each side, cut each one to length, and somehow the box is out of square or doesn't close right. What happened? Each measurement, even if it's just off by a hair, adds up. Pros avoid this by using stop blocks and reference cuts. Instead of measuring and marking each piece, they set a stop block on their saw or workbench. That way, every cut is identical. No guessing, no drift, no tape measure involved after the first setup. It's faster too, once you get in the habit. Another trick is to use the first piece you cut as your template for the others. Stack them up, mark them together, and cut as a batch. That way, you're not chasing numbers, you're chasing consistency. Measuring is important, but referencing and batching are how you get professional results. Let the tools do the thinking for you. This is how you avoid the domino effect of tiny mistakes turning into big headaches later on. Let's talk about squares. Not the shape, but the tool. You'd think any square off the shelf would be, well, square. But trust me, not all of them are. Cheaper or poorly made squares can be off by a degree or more, and that's enough to mess up your entire project. Even a high-end square can get knocked out of alignment if it takes a tumble. Pros know to check their squares regularly using the flip test. Here's how. Place your square against a straight edge, draw a line, then flip the square over and draw another line from the same spot. If the lines aren't exactly parallel, your square is lying to you. Don't ignore this. Replace or recalibrate it. This is especially important when laying out critical joinery like dovetails or miters. A false square means angles that don't match up, parts that don't meet, and a whole lot of frustration. When in doubt, check your square, especially if it's been bumped or dropped. Invest in a good quality square and treat it like the precision instrument it is. Keep it safe, keep it clean, and always check it before you trust it. That's how you build with confidence. A lot of folks fall into the trap of measuring everything from scratch, but the pros know that referencing is more reliable. Let's say you're building a frame. Instead of measuring each rail and style, you reference off a fixed edge or surface. That way, everything lines up perfectly, even if the numbers aren't perfect. It's the difference between theoretical perfection and real-world fit. Wood moves, tools aren't always perfect, and little errors creep in. By referencing from a known surface, like the face of a board or the edge of a table, you make sure every piece relates back to a single, reliable point. This is especially important in casework or cabinetry. If you measure from one end for every part, small errors stack up. But if you always reference off the same edge, your pieces will fit together, even if the tape was off by a hair. So, next time you lay out a project, ask yourself, can I reference instead of measure? The answer is almost always yes, and it'll save you headaches down the line. Alright, here it is. Mistake number 6. This one's a heartbreaker, and I've seen it ruin more projects than probably anything else. Ignoring the blade kerf. The kerf is the width of the material that your saw blade removes during a cut. On most blades, that's about 1/8 inch or 3 millimeters. Ignore it and your parts will all come out short. Here's what happens. You measure, mark, and cut right on the line, but you forget to account for the kerf and suddenly every piece is a little too small. Or maybe you cut to the wrong side of your line and there goes your precision. It's easy to overlook, especially when you're in a hurry. Pros always cut to the waist side of the line. Mark your waist, know your saw's kerf, and plan your cuts so the blade eats into the part you're throwing away, not the part you're keeping. For repetitive cuts, set up a stop block and do a test cut to see exactly where your blade lands. If you're ever unsure, make a test, cut on a scrap. Measure the offcut, and adjust as needed. A little planning here saves a lot of tears, and expensive wood, later on. Never, ever, ignore the kerf. Last up, let's talk about story sticks. These are simple, but they're one of the best-kept secrets of professional woodworking. Instead of relying on tapes and numbers, you use a piece of wood or a strip to physically transfer dimensions from your plan to your workpiece. No math, no risk of reading the tape wrong. A story stick captures every critical measurement. Mark your references, cabinet heights, spacing, shelf positions, right onto the stick. Then, use it to transfer those marks directly to your work. It's faster, more accurate, and immune to the little mistakes that creep in when you're squinting at a tape. Pros love story sticks for repeatable results, especially on big projects like kitchens or built-ins. If you need to make 10 identical drawer fronts, the story stick won't let you down. And if you ever need to rebuild or repair, your stick is your secret blueprint. Try it on your next project. You'll be amazed how much smoother it goes, and how much more confident you'll feel in every cut and layout. So, if your projects aren't fitting together the way they should, take a hard look at your measuring habits. Chances are, one of these 7 mistakes is sneaking into your process. It's easy to overlook the little things, but in woodworking, the little things become big problems fast. One bad line or a bent tape can mean hours of extra work, or worse, wasted material. The good news? You can dodge most of these mistakes with just a bit of discipline, sharper marking tools, reliable squares, stop blocks, referencing instead of measuring, and a well-used story stick. Make these habits part of your routine, and you'll see your projects come out cleaner, tighter, and just plain better. Let me know in the comments. Have you made mistake 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7? I'll bet we've all been there at least once. And if you want to take your measuring even further, check out my next video on the 3 measuring tools pros use every single day. Thanks for watching. See you in the shop.